Good morning. We are anticipating Chair Sharkey showing, we believe, but I thought it is after 11 o'clock, and so we'll go ahead and get started in the interest of everyone's time and call to order the Ventura County Air Pollution Control Board meeting. And we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the minutes of the meeting and special meeting of our district board of April 10th. Second. There's a motion to move approval and a second. And we have to modify by adding that Paul Miller, mayor of city of Simi Valley, evidently in the minutes was not exactly correct. So with that modification, is that in agreement with the motion approval? Motion second. Hearing no objections? So ordered. Next up, we have public comment. Are there any public comment cards submitted? Okay, no public comment cards submitted. Then we'll move ahead with board comments. Are there any board comments?
Just one. I will be attending, Mike will be attending a meeting on June 7th? 6th. I got it in there. In Santa Barbara. The board's up there in Santa Barbara, Simmons Fiscal County. So we'll bring back information on that.
Okay. Any other board comments? Seeing, hearing none, we'll move on. There are no closed session items. We have one consent item 7 on the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second on the consent. Any objections? Hearing none, so ordered. And then next up is item number 8, which is an overview and status report on our Air Quality Management Plan, AQMP 2007. Mr. Vegas, good morning.
Vice Chair Long, members of the board, I'm Mike Viegas, Air Pollution Control Officer. You're going to receive a status report today from Chuck Thomas. He's a supervising air quality specialist in our planning division on probably one of the most significant actions that's going to be before your board in quite some time. And this is our new air quality management plan. It's going to be the blueprint on how we bring the entire county of Ventura into compliance with the federal 8-hour ozone or smog standard, and show how we're going to continue to make progress towards meeting the more stringent California standards. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Thomas.
Good morning. Well, Mike pretty much introduced the topic, and I'd just like to add that there are several people here that have worked on the plan and are continuing to work on the plan. My co-lead, Judy McGaugh, she's in the audience and available for questions. And several other people, Ben Kakasian, Elaine Searcy, and Alan Ballard are all here. They're all very important people on this plan. So with that, kind of launch into it. This is an overview and status report, so I'm going to have some background information as well. Okay, which one? It's not working. There we go. The purpose of the plan is really this time twofold. It's the main part is the, like Mike said, for the Federal Clean Air Act, the 8-hour ozone standard, which actually was established back in 1997, 10 years ago. But it was tied up in court for a number of years, and it took that long to get to where we are today. And then the second part is the California Clean Air Act, our every 3-year assessment report that we have to do under the California Clean Air Act. They're normally separate documents, separate submittals, but this time it's being combined into one. Several air districts of the state are doing that. There we go. Whoops, backwards. Now, under the Federal Clean Air Act, ozone non-attainment areas in the country are divided into classifications based on the severity of their ozone problem. There are actually more classifications than what's shown up there, but those are the ones that are probably most important to us. We're classified as a moderate area with a June 15, 2010 attainment date that was established by EPA in 2004. However, when we looked at where we were at the time, we pretty much figured that we could attain by the June 15th, 2010 attainment date, but we decided to do what they call a voluntary bump up to a serious classification that has a 2013 attainment date as an insurance policy. We looked at the data, where we were going, what the trends were, and looked like that would probably be a better course of action. However, as I'll explain in a few minutes, the modeling demonstration has come back and it's not quite as optimistic. So we're probably going to have to bump up again to a severe 15 classification with this plan. The draft plan that we wrote was a serious plan, not a moderate plan, but now it looks like we're going to have to bump up to at least severe 15. To put the whole ozone problem around the country into perspective, those are all the ozone non-attainment areas in the country. Altogether, there's 126 areas and 474 counties of various classifications. As you can see, let's see if I can point out, in California, it doesn't really show, yeah it does, where that light blue right above the dark gray is South Coast. They are currently designated as a serious 17 area. We're a moderate area. They're going to be bumping up to extreme this week, maybe even today. San Joaquin, which is the lighter blue up in that area, they were a serious. They're going to bump up to extreme because their problems are so much worse than they had anticipated. But you look at San Diego, they're in pretty good shape. Now this is we always like to show this chart because it pretty much shows the progress we've made over the years. The top line is our population growth. The red line is our 8-hour ozone readings, exceedances over the years. And the bottom line is the old 1-hour standard, which has been revoked. It was revoked in 2005 and replaced with the 8-hour standard. We attained the 1-hour standard, and we're making excellent progress toward the 8-hour standard, even though we're probably not going to make the 2010 attainment as a moderate area. This is also an excellent showing of our progress we've made over the years. This is population exposure to ozone. It's required. It's a required showing for the California Clean Air Act report. And what this is showing is the population exposure based on a population-weighted and an area-weighted basis have declined since 1995 by about 98%. I think that's extremely dramatic. This chart shows a percentage reduction in ozone levels at the various monitoring stations around the county. As you see, the best reductions are El Rio, followed by Ventura, Thousand Oaks, Simi, with Ojai and Piru kind of trailing, but still very significant over the years. Now I'm going to spend a minute on this chart. This is an extremely important chart. This shows our design value trend. The design value is what we actually use for air quality planning purposes. The others are interesting, the required showings and all that, but this is what we use for planning. This is what we base our plan on. Design value is the fourth highest, the average of the fourth, it's the fourth highest average over the last 3 years of the ozone readings. It's called the design value. The red spot is the design value for this plan. It was established by EPA in 2004 and defined us as a moderate area. That's our starting point for the modeling and for everything else in this plan. And what we want to do is we want to get down to the yellow line. That's the 8-hour standard. And we also need to make progress toward the blue line, which is the state 8-hour standard. And as you can see from this chart, not only we've made good progress over the years, but we've made a little bit more progress past 2004. You see the design value has come down a tad in 2005 and 2006. The trend line crosses the yellow line, the 8-hour, federal 8-hour, at about 2011. But the modeling is coming back showing that we're probably not going to make that. And we're clearly not going to make the 2010 for a moderate area. Now, since Ojai and Simi have been in the news recently with respect to ozone, smog, we put this in this week. This is the design value for Ojai and Simi. Both of those also show excellent trends over the years, except that you'll notice starting in about 2000, Ojai crept up for about 3 years for unknown reasons, weather, it's weather conditions. The year-to-year fluctuations in these lines are due to primarily weather, and Ojai has stabilized and have coincided with Simi Valley ever since and have continued on down a little bit. Okay, with respect to the status of our plan, we did a draft plan back in February, January, February. We released it late February, anticipating attainment by 2010, but we wrote it as a serious area. We had a public workshop in which we had 3 people attend, and the public review closed in early April. And during that time, we got 1 public comment on our plan. And that really didn't have to do with the plan itself. Going on, like I said a minute ago, the modeling wasn't completed at the time we released the draft plan, but we were pretty well assured that we would meet 2010. But the modeling recently has come back showing that a later attainment date than what we had anticipated. We still don't have that modeling. It's still being reviewed by the Air Resources Board, but we know based on that information that we're going to have to redo what we've done, put out a new draft, and hold a new public review period. The basis for any air quality plan is the emission inventory. It tells you where your problem lies, what areas you need to target. The baseline for this plan is 2002. So as you can see, you look at the pie wedges up there, on-road motor vehicles and other mobile sources make for ROG, reactive organic compounds, make up about 55% of the ozone problem in Ventura County. And that's pretty much statewide, it's not just here. Followed by solvents. And interesting enough, the petroleum industry is down at 5.2%. Pesticide applications is pretty high. As agricultural pesticides, fumigants that they use like on the strawberry fields and things of that sort. Going on to NOx, which is the other precursor to ozone, you see about the same. On-road and other mobile sources, in this case, is nearly 62% of the problem. Followed by, petroleum industry is standing at only 0.5% in this case. So that's what we need to target. If you look at the trends of those out into the future, This chart goes out to 2012. When we do the revised draft plan, we're going to have to take these charts out more years. But they'll show the same trends. So we left it in for this presentation. Again, motor vehicles are going to show the greatest improvement because that's where most of the effort is going to have to be focused. Pesticides also drop because that's where most of the focus, a lot of the focus is going to be. But you look down at the petroleum industry, that's pretty much at the bottom. And doesn't change much. It's pretty static.
Excuse me, Madam Chair? Just a quick question. On these charts,
Yes.
Given the discussion we've had recently regarding ocean-going vessels and the extreme amount of pollutants they contribute, are those in any of those categories, or are they just left out there by themselves?
I'm going to have to talk to the emission inventory folks here.
Because it seems that
That's Dean McGaugh.
Well, the Infrajet project. It was a potential project that we put into the ARB modeling. So you won't see that really on these charts.
just
But-
for clarification, not necessarily just the potential project, but we have, with the port and everything, we have current vessels that service, are any of those modeled into this project?
They are in a different inventory. This is the onshore portion, and that's what the plan is directed at. And if you look at our draft, you'll see other chapters and other charts that include the OCS,
OCS meaning,
Outer Continental Shelf.
is
But
is that model assuming that those are going to, for the majority of the time, going to be ultimately onshore?
Right, they are in there. And in fact, the shipping ARB did a special study on that category, and those emissions are grown. I can't remember the percentage, but it was a huge amount. So ARB and other scientists in that area thought that those emissions will be growing.
So for the majority of those emissions that do end up on land because of the prevailing wind, they're not being treated with
Well,
the
it's in
same-
the model, and ARB is, again, they have a big control strategy to control those emissions.
So they're under the same
Yeah, but
motivation
it's,
to control as the onshore model?
they're really focused right now on the shipping industry. The ag industry is coming into more scrutiny, the trucking industry, all of those that in the past we haven't been able to control. But it's gotten so bad, and they noticed that the potential in the OCS has grown so much. We have about 7,000 ships per year going through our channel. And
Can I follow up that, Tom, just real quick?
Sure.
Because I'm starting to see 7,000 ships, and those that get close to the coast, and those that pump out that big black stuff that gets measured in our measurements of ozone and so on. To me, they should be almost combined because that's measurable pollutants going into what we're trying to control.
okay, they are combined in the modeling, but the plan that we present here it's split as far as whose responsibility is it. And our control goes out to the state title line, 3 mile area. After that, from 3 miles all the way out, maybe 100 miles, ARB puts all of those other emissions, shipping and aircraft, into their model.
I understand models. I understand
Okay.
that. But I don't understand how, if their model is affecting our model, and we're having to account for it on this table. We're accounting for the ozone levels and others on this table, on these tables, but some of it's coming from offshore.
Right.
How do you? I mean, if we're not controlling offshore enough to be significant. If I hear 7,000 ships and more coming, it sounds like to me we're going to have a tougher time meeting our levels.
Okay,
meeting our
Mike,
numbers.
it's been down to the port more often than I have.
Real quick, what when we're looking at these trend lines, we're showing the trend lines that the district is going to be working on and the state agencies. Now, when we do the model that is showing that we're probably not going to attain out until 2017, the ships are in there, including the amount of growth that the twin ports are expecting, which is more than doubling by 2030. So when we do the model and we look at everything the state can do, everything the district can do, what we expect the federal EPA to do, we put all those control measures into the model along with the ships. And that's actually going to tell us when we're actually going to attain. So yeah, they certainly do affect what we're going to measure at the monitoring station. And they're certainly, in essence, they're a part of the plan because they're a part of the emission modeling. However, the control part of the plan is really only addresses what we actually have jurisdiction over along with the state and the feds, but really focused on the district and the state. We really rely on those offshore ships. It's beyond EPA's purview because 95% of them are foreign flagged, and you have to work on trade agreements, so it's going to be the International Maritime Organization. This district, with some other coastal districts, have worked on some demonstration projects to show that you can reduce emissions from these large slow-speed diesels moving the container ships. And we're trying to demonstrate that to make a showing to International Maritime Organization that maybe you need to look at lower standards. California's pressing and working with EPA to get what's called a sulfur control zone off the state of California to control the sulfur content of bunker fuel, which also makes it easier to reduce emissions, both of, well, straight out reduces particulate in it itself, also makes it easier to control emissions from those engines.
How many do you I'm sorry, Tom, I don't interrupt you. How many ships do you predict are coming into shore to deliver within our boundaries of those 7,000 out there, and more coming?
We'd have to dig in the inventory for that. Our inventory, we have all the ones coming into Port Hueneme, and then we have, based on shipping studies, ARB comes up with the numbers for everything coming into the twin ports on the Great Circle that do pass by the Channel Islands. So, and they grow that based on trends in commerce and shipping that have been, because they go down, meet with the two ports, they meet with the shipping organizations, and that's where they've come up with this more than a doubling of the amount of cargo coming into California. So that's factored into the plan via the modeling and the inventory.
I can answer that. Actually, we have a very small port, and it's a very specialized port. And we had 330 ships come into Port Hueneme in 2002. So most of them are just going right by. The only, our port, again, can only handle about 340 of those.
So the reason I'm staying with this a little bit, I just came back from a conference where we're looking at all these bills being proposed for air quality control from the poor sanitary plants. We're going to start treating their stuff differently and costly if some of these bills pass, because we're going to be taking account of what comes out of there according to these new bills. And so I'm looking ahead saying we've got to start, if you want, unless you want businesses to disappear out of the whole county, because we're setting high standards, which is good, and we've met those, but we've got some we can't control. That's affecting what we're trying to control on land. Just a lot of things happening in this county, in California, that's going to affect governments and air quality management boards and so on. And hopefully somebody can come back and tell us about those new bills.
We will be able to, and actually when you come up to the Basin-wide Control Council, we can actually, one of the lead agency that kind of tracks the shipping districts kind of break up work. Since, none of us...
What we proposed on the poor guy out there that want to do that natural gas plant, and getting all the tugs and everyone else on board on the natural gas use, so it won't has many pollutants that come in and affect us.
That's one of the mitigation measures that was looked at, I know, in the BHP proposal, and we'll have to see what happens on the others. But yeah, that's a great CEQA comment that will probably be made by this district. And it's something that we try to address as districts, and certainly as the Association of Districts, the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association. We press very hard on EPA to press International Maritime Organization. We've actually met with there's 2 engine manufacturers for ocean-going vessels in the world, and we've met with both of them, and we're trying to demonstrate that there are things that International Maritime Organization can implement to assist us. It's not just a problem here. It's a problem on the East Coast. It's a problem in Europe. So.
I think just if I can just add on to your comments, Mike, it's important to see the structure of air pollution control law in the United States. It's really set by the Federal Clean Air Act, and there are things called federal sources. Those are sources that have impact on interstate commerce, trains, trucks, airplanes, and boats. That has been reserved by the federal government for their regulation. California has a waiver for motor vehicle standards, as you well know. There's the California Standard for Motor Vehicles. And so that's built into the Federal Clean Air Act. That's also codified in the California Clean Air Act. California, being the state with the biggest air pollution control problem, has a unique situation with local air districts, 35 of them to be exact, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, individually looking at their local jurisdictions. But because smog knows no political boundaries, you are dealing with stationary sources from a local air pollution control situation. The states have reserved the motor vehicles to themselves. The federal government has reserved federal sources to themselves. It has to be a cooperative program, so that's why there's a bit of this overlapping of the modeling as well as regulations. So I just wanted to add that to the comments that Mike's made.
Thank you.
That this is very coordinated activity.
Just, Madam Chair, one more quick question. Michael, the number escapes me, but one ship, standard ship out there, is the equivalent of how many thousands of automobiles?
That one escapes me too right now.
Isn't it like 10,
It's huge.
20,000? I mean, so I guess the point is that, as Council said, the pollution doesn't know any boundaries. And I know we've done studies that determine what percentage of discharge X amount of miles off the coast ends up on our shore. But when we're here given grants to get rid of lawnmower engines, and we've got ships out there that are dumping the equivalent of 10 to 20,000 automobiles, I think part of this problem is in the structure itself, because like you said, you've got the federal government that's reserved the highest pollutants to themselves so that they don't, jeopardize shipping. But I would hope that we start to compress the separation and increase the overlap so that we really do get at the bulk of all the problem rather than have it the way it is.
Yeah, actually, there's extensive coordination, and one of the things that really, the modeling one is one thing, and then, like I said, all the districts did pool together, and we used some of our Carl Moyer funds to actually go out and pay for the retrofit of two container ships, two large container ships, to show there's two technology, one slide valves and one diesel emulsification, and we're trying to demonstrate to the EPA and to the International Maritime Organization that these control technologies work, and we're working very hard to make sure that we get that sulfur control zone, which will also assist with these control measures, because it's beyond our reach, it's beyond the federal government's reach. At this point, it really comes down to how are things going to interplay. I mean, I think if EPA, the districts and many of the states urged EPA to move forward on large ocean-going ships, but they realized that they would land straight in trade court in no time. So, I mean, they're trying to work with the International Maritime Organization. It's tough sledding, but it's being addressed.
Mike, before you step away, and Chuck, and we'll get right back. I recall just a few months ago, maybe 6 or 8 months ago, didn't we tandem up with Santa Barbara and do a grant for we were trying to one offshore, basically a ship that transitioned through our channel, I think, as a demonstration project or something along that line.
Yes, we did. There's actually two ships, and our district, we're partnered with Santa Barbara. We're paying for the emission testing of those vessels.
Right. So we're
Bay Area and some other districts are actually paying for the retrofit.
So we got it on the screen. We were doing, and so as you said, we'll do some testing and monitoring, so we can at least then maybe step it up when we're looking at the other, or say, hey, this is where we need to go. We've got a system that seems to work, and maybe we can address it that way. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Vance here. This is the same graph, but it was NOx, and again, you'll see most of the improvement is, again, going to come from motor vehicles, which are under the jurisdiction of the Air Resources Board. Petroleum industry and electric utilities are pretty much down at the bottom. Part of the reason is they've been extremely well controlled over the years, and in the case of the petroleum industry, petroleum is declining in the county. Now, our control strategy for this plan is very bifurcated into a local component, meaning us, and the Air Resources Board component. In this plan, we're pretty much carrying over everything that we've done in the past and are currently doing into the new plan. Those are the various components up there, which I'm not really going to get into, except maybe for the last couple, the new source review and the review of further progress. I'll touch on those a bit later. The Air Resources Board component is all their existing regulations and things that they are planning on doing under what they call their new statewide strategy. They've developed a whole new statewide strategy that's mostly focused on San Joaquin and South Coast to get those guys into attainment, because they have the worst, the most difficult problem. So the ARB statewide strategy, which they're just adopted and are barely starting to implement, focuses on South Coast and San Joaquin, but it will apply statewide, which means we will get the benefits of that statewide strategy, as will other areas in California. And the statewide strategy is, again, focused on mobile sources. Those are the broad categories. Again, because mobile source is the biggest part of the problem and where we get the most reductions. The goods movement sources up there is mostly focuses on the ports, like the Port of Long Beach and Los Angeles, Port of San Francisco, and moving goods out of those areas and throughout the state. Consumer products is another big part, as well as pesticides, except pesticides will be implemented by the Department of Pesticide Regulation, DPR. Now we get to our reclassification, what we also call is the bump up. As I said, we thought we were a moderate area, could attain as a moderate area. We wrote the plan as a serious area, anticipating a voluntary bump up to serious, and that's the way we wrote the plan. But now, because of the modeling, like I said, it looks like we're going to have to do a voluntary bump up to severe. And when I say voluntary, under the Clean Air Act, you can voluntarily request to be moved up to a higher classification. It's much easier to do a voluntary bump up than it is for EPA to bump you up later. One of the benefits is we wouldn't have to do an additional air quality plan, because we would do it now rather than doing a whole separate plan later. And there are possible sanctions for not meeting certain milestones as a serious or a moderate area, so it's best just to do it as a severe area. Under the implications, there are implications, more stringent requirements. However, the good news there is that under the 1 hour standard, we were a severe area. And everything we've been doing for years, we've been doing under the severe classification, those requirements. So largely, there are no more severe or no more serious requirements for us. Under the CMAQ, this is the Congestion Management Air Quality Improvement Program. It's federal money that comes to areas such as Ventura County with ozone and other air quality problems. Federal money. We get a bump up. We get more. Eventually, we'll get some more money, CMAQ funds coming into the county for transit projects, things of that sort, that improve air quality and reduce congestion. We also get some more money for our Carl Moyer program. So those are the two real benefits. Now, as a severe or a moderate or even a serious area, we have to make certain reasonable further progress milestones. Those are emission reductions of reactive organic compounds or nitrogen oxides of those percentages. In other words, if we are 2018 as a severe area, we would have to show 48% reduction in ROG and or NOx by 2018. Those are fixed milestones that we have to show, And I'm not sure yet, but I think we probably be able to do that, but time will tell. So that's one of the more serious requirements of bumping up, is that we have to make further emission reductions than we had anticipated. We also have new source review requirements that we would have to make. As a moderate area, we'd have to show 1.15 to 1, a serious area 1.2 to 1, and as a severe area 1.3 to 1, emission offsets for new major sources. However, the good news, because we've been a severe area, our rule is already at 1.3 to 1, so we aren't going to have to make any changes there. The modeling and attainment demonstration this time around is being conducted in two big regional areas, Southern California and Northern California. ARB is doing it for Northern California, and the South Coast Air Quality Management District is doing it for Southern California. We're part of Southern California, so South Coast has been doing it for us, and we just recently got the results. Our ARB has the results. We have a summary of those results, which again showing that we might have to bump up to severe. Now moving on to the triennial progress report we have to make for the California Clean Air Act, which we're combining into this plan. It has four basic parts: to identify and correct any deficiencies, which we haven't found any; improvement in air quality and emission trends, which I've already gone over; and review of every feasible measure, which we've done. We do it periodically. We look at our rules and we try to see where they can be improved by looking at what other people are doing in other parts of the state with their rules and seeing if there's ways, based on what they've been doing, if we can improve ours in any way. We did in 2001 and 2004, and we've done it again. Our rules staff has examined 44 of our rules and found 8 rules that we can improve upon. And those are listed, and they will be part of the triennial assessment, and there's a schedule for making those improvements over this year and next year. The next steps, as laid out in the slide, is the completion of the modeling, and then once we have that in-house, we can revise the plan as we need to. We do another draft of the 2007 plan with an additional 30-day public review and public workshop. And then it comes to your board for approval. We are hoping for July, but we're not sure we can make July, so it'll probably be September. And then that gets sent on to the Air Resources Board, and they've told us, at least on conference call, that they will adopt it by executive order rather than holding a public hearing in Sacramento. And then they will send it on to EPA for their review and approval. And EPA, I believe, has 18 months to do that review and approval. So, with just one more slide, some final thoughts. Over the last 20, 30 years, Ventura County has made extremely good progress in improving its air quality, as have most parts of California. California has had one of the most stringent, most aggressive air pollution programs in the world, and it's one of the environmental success stories in the world. There's just no doubt about it. But we still need additional emission reductions to meet the 8-hour standard and make further progress toward the state standard. But the good news, at least with respect to the federal 8-hour standard, is we do eventually anticipate attainment, whether it's 2017 or some date before that. We do anticipate that. So that concludes my presentation, and open to any additional questions.
There's a thing called vehicle pollutant reduction control, goals of the manufacturing industry that we read about recently, both the fuel reduction and also the pollutant controls. Have those been factored into this? Because they've got dates set up for so much better gas mileage and better pollutant control. Have you figured that into this? Because that looks like there's some time frames on that.
Everything that, Air Resources Board takes the lead on that, and they've been extremely aggressive over the years. And Air Resources Board, I can say with assurance that they're doing everything, and even then some, to get those emission reductions. And if they anticipate it being done, it's in there.
The reason I ask you that question is that we're having so much more traffic with our freeways being widened and so on and so forth, making it easier to go through Ventura County in
Correct.
different ways. You're going to have more and more traffic and trucks going through.
That's true. That's all been factored in.
It's all been factored in.
Correct.
And this has too. Okay.
When you look at when you look at those graphs we showed you with the reducing motor vehicle emissions, that's taken into account projected increases in motor vehicle.
Okay.
It's all factored in. Well, but what you're seeing is you're seeing the bottom line after all these things are factored in.
Right. Okay.
Madam Chair, just a quick question. Could you put in perspective, I mean, given the statements about our significant accomplishments and the trends in the graphs and that, could you put into perspective the information that was published not too long ago that this county is the 12th worst county?
Okay, that's kind of why I put some of those, like the Ojai and the Simi design value graphs in, and why some of those other graphs are so important for you to see. The Lung Association has a very conservative method that they use. They do it a little differently. They take into account not only the number of days over the standard, but for each of those days, they look at how bad those days are, and they put a weighting factor onto each of those days. So the worst day, the higher the weighting factor. So it has a lot to do with the methodology that they've employed.
An individual city within the county could kick up the entire county's rating?
Yeah, this has been, when you
we
look at,
annex those cities, we'd be fine, right?
when you look at, yeah.
Just kidding, Mayor.
When you really look at what they did, what they do is they actually look at the pollutant standard index, and they do it. So if you have an exceedance in Ojai one day, the whole county gets dinged for it in theirs. And that's in essence how we work when we look at the design value. But the thing is they're extremely aggressive on it. And the other thing to keep in perspective is, and I don't know how this worked. I mean, when you looked at the design values, we actually improved the last couple of years, although what it led me to believe, they said it got worse, respective to some other areas. Now, maybe that county that was 12th last year and we were 13th, they had better improvement over the past couple of years than we did. We still had improvement, but maybe they improved more than we did, percentage-wise. So, our ranking went from 13th dirtiest in the nation, region in the nation, to 12th. But the bottom line is we still made progress. And I wanted to touch on the particulate here. I realize we're not talking about it right now. But we've been able to look at their study in more detail, and it looks like they included fire data during the firestorms in there. And that got us the lower grade. And that data is tagged for EPA removal as what's called an exceptional event. But EPA it seems like they take about 2-3 years to ever get through this. So when the Lung Association looks at the raw data, they might see the tag, but they're not sure why, and they count it right in there. And you're gonna, during a wildfire, especially even the ones in 2003 were included. I mean, you're gonna see phenomenal particulate rates, but are they created by man? Is there something an air district can do about that? No, they're not.
Do they count Texas and those others where there were big fires this year as non-attainment days?
I can't speak to that, but they did it here, so it could have happened there.
I have a couple of questions. One, does this, it doesn't appear, but would this be a proper form to put in the, I forgot the Assembly bill where we have to meet greenhouse gas emissions?
32.
Yeah, maybe 32.
Actually, no, this is strictly to meet our non-attainment goals for the federal ozone standard and show that we're continuing to make progress with the California ozone standard. And although the staff working on this, when they complete this plan, is going to be the staff that's going to be helping us with our greenhouse gas plan.
And they are related to some degree. The other question I had, in the mitigation measures that are proposed, I see that there's a lot of them that are, there's a good section of them that are land use related. Land use development alternatives, and talks about transit-oriented development and trying to get good job housing balance, things like that. I think that this would be valuable to provide to the Civic Alliance that's doing a growth scenario. They're having, I think, June 7th, a forum where they're taking input about the different types of growth scenarios we could have in Ventura County, that I think this should play a large part in it, to look at, you know, what their scenarios will do for air pollution. I think maybe if you could provide them information about what we recommend in terms of ways to reduce air pollution in terms of development patterns. So I think that would be beneficial if we could provide that to them.
Yeah, certainly we could provide them information on the transportation control measures that you're looking at.
No, thank you. And then also looking at that trend line, if everything were going according to that trend line, we were supposed to have met our goals by 2011, as I recall seeing that chart. And I'm thinking the reason we're not making it is because over half of the pollutants that are out there are coming from mobile source, and that is the reason why we're not going to be able to reach it. Is that?
That's a large part. There's really two players here. And the first, you hit it right on the head. When you look at dealing with some of the sources that the state is starting to look at, whether it's off-road construction equipment, agricultural pump engines, cargo handling equipment, that would be the cranes, harbor craft, the tugboats, all those control measures are coming on. They start to kick in. The effective dates of those control measures, even though some are being adopted as we speak, is really in the 2014-2015 range. So we need those control measures to actually start getting the actual reduction in those out years, is what it is. The other thing is, I know Chuck and I, it was probably right when the new 8 hours, probably 10 years ago, we went to an air and waste management conference right when EPA promulgated the new 8-hour standard. And one of the things they had is they had some modelers there, and they just picked a few. They didn't say where they had picked these, but they picked some counties throughout the United States, and what they did is they ran the models. And they noticed as you continued to make reductions, let's say you pulled out another ton per day in your county, the air quality improvement was less and less, meaning you could pull a ton per day out and get a smaller increment in air quality improvement than you did back when we were making, when you had higher smog levels. So it becomes a nonlinear response. So those two things are playing in there. We're entering the realm of diminishing gains, because as you get closer to the background ozone level, it's just harder to make progress. So those two.
And I think you answered the next question I have, which was regarding construction equipment. That I would think could be on our list of measures that could be applied. While it would be up to cities and whoever's making conditions for those development projects to require, trap emissions for diesel traps. But that does seem like it could be a measure, and I'm wondering why that isn't in here.
Well, first of all, the actual regulation is going to be a state measure, so it will be in there in the state measures. And that's something we can address through our air quality management guidelines.
It's still something that you could add into your list as a measure that can be done, and it's certainly something that could be applied not only by the state requiring it, but also by local entities doing it too.
That's a difficult one well, first of all, the Air Resources Board, part of their state strategy, are going after construction equipment.
Yeah.
They're establishing new regulations to reduce emissions, exhaust emissions from construction equipment statewide. But beyond that, I think what you're talking about is like a CEQA-type mitigation measure in our plan. And that would not be enforceable by the district. And it's not enforceable by the state or by EPA. Therefore, it wouldn't really count in our plan. We do not have jurisdiction over land use type activities.
Well, for example, you have incentives to increase density around transit centers. That is a measure that we say is feasible. And this would be, you might just call it incentives to, require construction equipment to have. But I think it is worth mentioning.
Okay.
By the way, let me follow up with that. That's one of those bills being considered right now that we heard about this past week, is control of the construction equipment, and it's very stiff. I'm not sure it's going to pass because it is that stiff, and it's going to cost the industry tons to change, unless they give them a period of time, for the equipment to, what do you call that? Yeah, transition, exactly.
But we have had projects in our county that have been approved requiring those, and it's up to the individual jurisdiction to require them, but I think some mention is worthwhile. So.
Okay.
Any questions?
I think so.
Are you, does that wrap it up there, sir?
That wraps it up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Before the body.
Madam Chair, if I could, but before Chuck leaves, Chuck, I had the opportunity to hear your presentation at SCAG.
Oh, you were there?
Yeah, and being number 12 on the list certainly is not a good thing, but misery loves company, because I think we were probably the best one in the room when you're talking about Southern California. So it was, hearing ours compared to others was really kind of, yeah, we're bad, but gee, we're not as bad as them. And of course, a lot of the problem is we get a lot of their blow-by and things like that. I know the city of SUNY gets some.
Well, that's another thing, is we are getting some transport from South Coast.
Right.
So most of our pollution problem is homegrown, but we do have some from blowing in from our neighbors to the south.
East wind type stuff.
And I just wanted to add that this last Smart Growth Conference in Los Angeles had a whole tract on public health and designing cities for just that, for the Heart Association and the Lung Association. And the public health officers in the state are coming out just in favor of a lot of the land use implementations. And then one of the other tracks, and one of the unique things that's coming out in the green, as people are competing for LEED certification in green buildings, is recognizing it's not just about the building itself, it's about the 3 to 4 to 5 months it takes to build a building, and how you manage your, not just construction waste, but your air quality and some of these things also. Again, it's by volunteer, but as more pressure comes for LEED certification, these are like one of the easiest ones to pick off the top, and you can get that rather quickly. Again, some of it has to be, the equipment has to be there, some of the technologies are there, it's a little expensive, but some of these companies are specializing in green building and LEED certification, and you get a big chunk of points right off the top without having to do anything, and I think that's helping, will also help us. But I think it's like anything else, that needs to be brought out and shown that, hey, this is an opportunity, you might want to seize upon it. So I know the Green Building Council is utilizing that as an effort to go forward. Well, Madam Chair, we've had a great discussion on this. I'd be happy to move the item of receive and file.
The motion?
Second.
And? We'll look forward to the second version, next version. Seeing no objection to that, that item carries. Next up, we have item 9, Clean Air Fund Project Lawnmower Exchange Program.
Yeah, good old lawnmowers. Vice Chair Long, members of the board. I'm Stan Cowan, air quality engineer for the district. And the Clean Air Fund was established in 1991 as a donation from 3M Company of $1.5 million. And part of that donation was set aside as a permanent endowment. $300,000 was set aside as a permanent endowment to continue the fund so we could continue funding projects. That endowment has grown to $809,000, and currently only about 5% of that amount is available for funding projects each year, about $35,000. Also, your board established a Clean Air Fund Advisory Committee to recommend projects for funding. So all the projects that you see here today go through your advisory committee. Last June 13th of last year, your board authorized a project for lawnmower exchange program to the tune of about $65,000. This is an ongoing program that reduces emissions of both NOx and hydrocarbons by recycling older gasoline lawnmowers. The county residents take their old gasoline lawnmowers to the metal recycler. Then they get a discount, which they get a voucher worth a discount, which they take to Lowe's, and then they buy an electric lawnmower with that. And so far, we've retired about 56 lawnmowers, and of the $65,000, we've spent about $6,000, so there's still about $59,000 remaining. Currently, the program offers these vouchers, about $150 vouchers for the cordless mower and $50 for the plug-in electric lawnmowers. Recently, staff received a request from another vendor of electric lawnmowers, Country Home Products, and they've offered to sell their cordless electric lawnmower to county residents for $299, and when you include the voucher amount from the Clean Air Fund of $150, it reduces the price to $149. This lawnmower has had good reviews. It's actually the mainstay for lawnmower exchange programs up and down the state. Other air districts do this, and they've been using the Newton cordless lawnmower. Air districts such as South Coast, Sacramento, San Diego, San Joaquin, and Bay Area also have programs that use this mower. The Clean Air Fund Advisory Committee has recommended unanimously that your board authorize the Ventura County Community Foundation, the foundation is the trustee for the Clean Air Fund, to add this new vendor to the lawnmower exchange program. Also to authorize the APCO to enter into an MOU with Country Home Products to formalize prices and procedures, and to participate in this program using existing funds from the lawnmower program. This is a recommended action, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about this item.
Questions?
Just relative to if you were to remove like one car off the road, isn't that what about 56 of or 52 of these gasoline-powered mowers?
Yeah, the older four-stroke mowers.
I'm just thinking in terms of the effectiveness, if we can get more
It's not
cars off the road compared to this little bit by little bit by little bit.
It's small, but you have to remember these engines are some of the dirtiest around. So actually, they say mowing your lawn's equivalent to driving a new car in the neighborhood of about 100 miles. So it's actually quite cost effective to get rid of these.
Stan, if I could ask you, if they trade in their old gasoline mower and they go to Lowe's and they decide they're going to go on a home fitness program and decide they want to do a push mower, which some of them are pretty darn efficient, are they eligible to trade into that?
Not as a program set up right now, no. But
So advocate for it.
That's why it just doesn't. Yeah.
Do we have a correction on the maximum total to-date expenditure of the?
yeah, there is a correction on that. That a lot of all those funds that have been authorized have not been expended. Some of the projects were canceled, like the Have Blue, for example, and a number of other projects. But that's how much was authorized, and that's the correct number. That's the $1,000,008.
So it's 1.8
Yeah.
instead of
1.7. Right.
Okay.
I get one question.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. 6,000 seems like a very minute number as far as money put out there to do this kind of thing, 1/10 of it. Have you contacted major, people have lawns, major lawns like schools, hospitals, other places, cities, to see if you can work with them on this program?
Well, when you have electric lawnmower, the cordless ones, there's a limited charge, so you really can't use it commercially. It has a limit of maybe half an acre or something that you could mow per day, so it's really designed for kind of residential type situations. Now that's different. The next item talks about commercial leaf blowers, and that may have more implications for commercial.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'll move the item.
Motion and a second. Any further questions? Any objection to the motion? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you. And the next item 10 is the commercial leaf blower exchange program.
Yeah, this is another Clean Air Fund project. In 2006, both the South Coast APMD and Yolo Solano funded a commercial leaf blower exchange program, and this reduces emissions similar to the lawnmower exchange program in that gasoline leaf blowers, the older four-stroke, which have fairly high emissions, are replaced by the lower emission, quieter leaf blowers they're also gasoline, but they reduce emissions by 90% hydrocarbon emissions, so they are cleaner. We had two proposals for the commercial leaf blowers. The first was from a leaf blower manufacturer, Pacific Steel is the name of the company, and they've offered to hold a actually trade-in event, and we'd like to see either one or two events, one in the West County, one in the East County, and they would provide all the logistical support and manpower to take care of manning these events and all of the logistics involved. They've also offered a 10% discount on their commercial backpack leaf blower. They're going to offer it to us for $470 minus a 10% discount. The Clean Air Fund would provide a $123 voucher that would reduce the cost to about $300 plus tax. And this proposal would exchange about 200 leaf blowers at a maximum cost of $24,600. And the district would not be obligated to purchase any unsold leaf blowers. And the second leaf blower project is similar to the lawnmower in that an individual would take their leaf blower to the recycler, then they would get a voucher from us, from the Clean Air Fund, take that to Lowe's, who also has a commercial backpack leaf blower, and that'd be worth the same amount, $123. Lowe's is offered to sell their commercial leaf blower at a discount of $269, and when you consider the $123 discount from the Clean Air Fund, the final price would be about $146 plus tax. The Clean Air Fund Advisory Committee has unanimously recommended both of these projects using existing funds that are left over from the lawnmower program that we have from last year. They've recommended action is for the APCO to sign an amended grant agreement with the Community Foundation so that the lawnmower program could include also the leaf blowers as well. Also, it authorizes the APCO to enter into a purchase agreement with Pacific Steel, the vendor, so that for $24,600, and finally authorizes the APCO to use the existing account with Lowe's so that we could offer the voucher for their leaf blower program as well as the electric lawnmowers.
Any questions?
Any questions?
One quick one, and I appreciate all the staff work on this and setting this up. This is one that, when you connect all the dots, this is one I just can't support, and not because of all the hard work, and I understand where it's going, but about 4 weeks ago, Supervisor Long and myself sat in front of the Regional Water Quality Control Board and tried to get people to understand that we were going to start making a difference. And I know this seems completely remote from that, but I've watched the gardeners in my neighborhood, and I've worked hard with mine to, I'd much rather see us maybe perhaps given a rake, a broom, and a dustpan, because you know where it all ends up. It ends up in the gutter. And and then, of course, on a windy day, it adds to particulate matter, causes problems. But as importantly, it goes into storm drains and starts creating organic matter and sends our bacteria counts absolutely off the charts, which we're going to spend a fortune on if this stormwater program and permit gets in place. This is one of those small things that seems so benign that don't bother, but I'm just trying to connect the dots for everybody here, and I appreciate all the hard work. The only thing I would say, I won't be able to support the motion this time out, but I'm wondering, in that gathering in the east and west where those, we could have an educational program,
Well, in fact,
and I mean, about what a dustpan can be used for. Only because I don't think they're on trucks anymore. I've never even seen it. You cut the lawn and they blow they don't even bag it. They just move it. And so I know it's just something that when we start connecting all the dots, we start talking about the problems we have here. We got to start somewhere. So
Pacific Steel actually has a training program on the proper use of blowers, and then as part of the events, they're going to actually train people who come in to trade in their blowers on the proper operation. And I'm going to make sure that they focus on that area if this program goes forward.
Well, I really would, really would encourage you to try to get them to understand. Perhaps, I know that we'll be in a situation where we'll be actually finding them somewhere down the road. If we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of $7 million in our city, where we're spending almost $300,000 now, all of us combined are going to be spending an absolute fortune. Somehow we're going to have to recoup that, and I don't want to see it come on the backs of these folks, but somehow there has to be an understanding that they've got a responsibility in this, and if that can be brought out, and I'd certainly would like to look at it, and when they show up in my neighborhood in about 6 months with brand new leaf blowers and actually have a dustpan, I will say, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And also, Mayor Holden, before he left, said the same thing, is that he keeps seeing them go right down into the storm drain with these leaf blowers. But I think if you can use this as a mechanism to train them not to do that, I think that would be beneficial. I really like the idea that they're quieter, because I'm sure as city people, representatives, we always get complaints about the loud leaf blowers. But with the knowledge that they will be educating them not to go in the storm drain, I will support. I'll go ahead and move the motion, or move the recommendation.
Second?
I know I have one other point, but go ahead.
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
Just one comment before we vote, because I support this also, but do you, I think that when they're out doing the street maintenance for the cities and they're blowing them out in the street, that it should be coordinated with the street sweeping same day in those areas. Have we ever talked to our city about that, our cities about coordination?
We haven't, but maybe we should.
I think it'd be a good idea.
I remember the other point I was going to make is that maybe we can also send notices to landscape companies, gardeners, that this program is available, so that they'll come in and, because they're the ones that are going to be using these the most, and having them transfer over to one that's less polluting will be beneficial, and also educating the ones that are using it the most. So I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's not just the guy next door, it's actually the people that do it for a living every single day.
Yeah, these are commercial, and there is a mailing list that Pacific Steel has. They're going to contact all their customers.
Good. Thank you.
We'll make sure they're involved.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion, comments, objection to the motion? Seeing none, thank you for your work.
Thank you.
It passes. We'll move on to
As part of the district's ongoing efforts to balance our budget and contain costs, we review vacant positions, first to determine if we need to fill the position, and if so, at what level. Staff has determined that the responsibilities of our fiscal and administrative services manager can be fulfilled using an existing county classification. This would result in salary savings for the district. In addition, it would also assist county human resources in simplifying their work on any future market-based salary adjustments by using the county classification. The actual salary savings are higher than outlined in the board letter. We would be saving just over $5,300 annually at top range, excluding benefits. As the existing district classification has not yet gone through the general salary and management, market-based adjustments, although it will probably do so in June of this year. And the county classification that we're actually proposing went through that general salary adjustment and market-based adjustments in June 2006. And that's all I have. Be happy to answer questions.
questions.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second for approval. Any objections to the motion? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you. Item 12, contract for laboratory services.
Vice Chair Long, members of the board, good morning. I'm Keith Duvall, Program Manager for the Air District. As part of the district's air monitoring program, we monitor the county's air quality for very fine particulates, or what we call PM 2.5. To support this effort, we operate a laboratory in our offices to analyze filters for PM 2.5. The Environmental Protection Agency reimburses us for our PM 2.5 work. We also perform this work for the California Air Resources Board and several other air districts, and this work is also reimbursed through the same EPA grant. Since 1999, we've been performing PM 2.5 filter work for Edwards Air Force Base as a subcontractor. The Air Force is required to monitor the base's ambient air quality in support of their environmental programs. Operation of Edwards Air Force Base monitoring is carried out by a subcontractor called JT3 LLC Incorporated. The proposed contract we're seeking your approval on is with JT3 LLC to provide laboratory services to them similar to what we provide to the other agencies and do for our own monitoring work. We charge for this work at a rate of about $55 per filter that's analyzed, and this rate allows us to cover our costs. This is the same rate that EPA also reimburses us for. The total amount of the proposed contract with JT3 is about $4,070 per year. It covers our costs, and if our costs increase, there are provisions in the contract that allow us to make per filter charge adjustments. So today we're asking you to authorize the Air Pollution Control Officer to sign and execute the contract with JT3 LLC. We're also requesting that you authorize the Air Pollution Control Officer to make minor adjustments to the contract as necessary. If a significant change is required, we'll bring that back to your board for your board's approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, any objection? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you, Keith. Item 13, Injury and Illness Prevention Program.
California Code of Regulations specifically mandates that each employer maintains an effective injury and illness protection program. To comply with this requirement, we have prepared a customized program manual patterned after the County of Ventura's. All relevant procedures that we share with county operations are included in this document, and we've also customized it for the specific work we do, such as running monitoring stations, etc., and the lab. I'd like to point out that this proposed program manual has been reviewed by County Risk Management, and that's all I have.
Madam Chair, I'll move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, discussion? Any objection? Seeing none, so ordered. Thank you, sir. Item 14.
Our external auditor recently completed our audit for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2006, and the audit consisted of 2 reports. The first report was the comprehensive annual financial report, and the second was the single audit report. The single audit report is required to satisfy requirements in obtaining our federal grant from EPA. I'm pleased to note that the external audit did not find any material weaknesses in our financial system, and copies of this report were provided to your board and are on file with the clerk of the board.
Now move to receive and file.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions, discussion, objection? Seeing none, so ordered. And thank you.
No.
No material weaknesses. That's good. We thank you. And that completes the agenda for the board, and we thank you. And are we meeting in June?
Yes, we are meeting. We'll meet in June 12th. June is the budget.
Budgets.
And we have this is the 1 month we have 2 hearings, so we'll be meeting June 12th and June 26th. Under state law, we have 1 hearing to take public comment on the budget, but it cannot be adopted until at least 14 days after that. So we'll be meeting on June 26th also.
Great. Okay.
We should check and make sure June 26th we're going to have a quorum. Our board, does our board go dark that last week in June?
No.
Okay. All right. She
We'll
said
check
no.
it. Yeah.
It's a fifth Tuesday, right?
Yeah, but some,
Adjourned.
June 26th. I guess, yeah, so next week is 4th of July.